My name is Tupac Martyr, and this is Glyph. Real stories from names you may not know, or whose work you've probably seen, heard, or read without realizing it. Getting into how they got here, the twists, the detours, and what's driving them now. Today, I'm in conversation with Louis Oliver.
But I do remember going through the phase that all children do and being like, oh, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a bus driver, and that sort of thing. And I think, for me anyway, I didn't really come to a position of being, this is the sort of place I want to go to until I was a little bit older. So like 15, 16. And then I was like, what's film about? What's this lighting thing? And I started to see different creative industries, because I was always quite a creative child, just sort of like drawing or, creating things or doing stuff with computers.
Doing something computers.
Yeah.
It sounds like something a lot of people do that go into this. So what, between 5 and 15, I think many people just kind of go through. Is there a moment? Is there a show? Is there a film? Is there something that you kind of went, oh, how am I part of that? Or how do you do that?
So, not really. It all sort of, I think it all just built up slowly over time. Like, when I was first applying to go to university, I applied strictly for like film and directing things. Hilariously, nothing that I do now. And then I can't remember what you called it, but you submit all your applications. You can pick 5 universities or something. And then I went and viewed them all. And I was just like, do you know what? I don't think this is it. So I ended up just doing a business management course, which I don't think it was really a thing. I think that it felt like a little made up course where you would talk about live events or live production and stuff like that. But that led me to meeting the guys at Scion. And I went on a summer job and some money, And my parents always brought me up doing, if you want to do nice things, go get a job and a bit of cash. So I was like, summer job, this seems like fun. A couple of mates from uni went and did it. We just went and worked in the warehouse. And that's where I really sort of got exposed to the live side of things and lighting and video and an area that I'd obviously seen through going to shows, but never sort of been like, oh, that's a job that you can do.
It's weird, isn't it? I always say that. So what kind of jobs did you have
growing up?
Growing up, yeah.
Oh, I did it all. I worked in a potato factory, worked as just like a busboy in a restaurant. I think that was my first job. I think I was like 13, 14 when you were allowed. The time was different back then. I just did that on like some evenings and weekends for a little bit of extra pocket money. But then, I went to work in a potato factory, again, just to bring money in, just to like do fun things. Where else did we go? Costa. All the usuals that you do when you're growing up, like coffee shops, restaurants. Frankie and Benny's. Worked there for a while I was at university. And then after sort of like going through all that, and then when I started that summer job, it was kind of like, that was like a big tipping point. I think I pretty much decided to bin off the
cappuccino
making, but also the university degree. I did just enough to get a pass or whatever it is, a 2-2. But my tutors at the time were just like, well, you're actually going out and doing the things that we're talking about, so this is fine. And they sort of gave me like a list of things that I needed to do to just get the degree. Because I think they understood that after that summer, after the first year of university, they were just like, yeah, I don't think you're going to be attending much.
Obviously, Scion is a very important space for a lot of people in the industry. It's may Brian rest in peace. Talk to me about arriving to the warehouse on the first day, and what was the first thing that someone went and like grab a park can or something like that, and you're like, what?
I think it was all the cables. It's like when you start learning about all the different cables you got to use, and then there's a 3 and a 5 pin. It's like, why is there 2 different cables for doing the same thing? But it was all. I just remember there being a lot of people there, a lot of different people from different sort of like paths. There was technicians, there was LDs, and they're all just sort of like, it was a very busy place. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Busy in a different way as well, like the coffee shops and the restaurants. That's a different kind of busy. But everyone sort of was like moving with purpose. And it was like, okay, people looming outside. But yeah, it was a very interesting first day. And yeah, you just sort of like, it was very much a bombardment of information. These lights move, these ones don't. This is this stuff that I remember at the time. Cyan had a couple of media servers, so there was someone tinkering away on, I can't even remember,
Catalyst probably at that
I
point.
think it was Catalyst, yeah. But yeah, it was just a very busy place, and it was very interesting. And I still hold Jez there, very close to me, and Brian as well. He was my first sort of real mentor, I think, in terms of this industry. Yeah, it was very busy, I thought it was very unique, sort of like way of working, and just seeing and meeting all these different people doing different jobs, and from corporate things all the way to rock and roll. And obviously that's where I sort of gelled with more than the corporate stuff.
Because I never did a warehouse job. That's one of those things that I never did.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to warehouses, but I never did a warehouse job. I did a loading stuff, and obviously as a technician, but I never did warehouse. Did you graduate from like cables to dimmers to lights to moving lights to cleaning moving lights or setting up moving lights? Is there like a path into that? Or
I think it was at the time when there was like one person who kind of like fixed the stuff. So it was like Nick there. He was still very involved with, just the maintenance of the moving lights and stuff like that. I kind of just sort of like started to gel with, I just offered my time. I was just like, oh, you need an extra person to load into Brixton for this thing, and just went along and learned. And then it got very quickly, I think I started to like just play around with the lighting consoles, the classic Pearl with the roller thing. And just sort of self-taught the console to as much as I needed. I think that's the way I operate anyway, is that I'll be like, I need to use this tool. What bits do I need to use of this tool? I don't need to know everything about it, and just learn and figure out what you need there and then. So yeah, started shadowing people on shows, and then I was like, cool, I want to do the other bit as well. I want to turn the lights on and off, not just plug them in. So I started a couple of bands at the university I was at that I met through them coming to do shows. I was involved with the live events there a little bit, sort of like helping run the day-to-day, and just, as you do at university, you get pulled into different things. And then, what was it? I think I met Yumi at 6, very early into sort of getting involved with this. And I got to know what is now very old friend Rob Highcroft, and we got on, and he was just like, okay, do you want to come and light the band at Reading? Because I was already there with Cyan. So I lit them at Reading, and then went up to Leeds with them as well. Met them, and yeah, it was the beginning of a new chapter. It was just using what was at the festival. There was no additional lighting to think of. So using a page, or whatever. What did you used to call it?
Yeah, it was a page. Yeah, you used to have your own page.
So someone helped me set up a page, then just ran their show, and then that's kind of where I want to call it designing at that point, but like the lighting of artists became a thing, and we started our journey from there.
I used to have acetates.
Acetate.
Yeah, so like the ones that you put on top of the overhead projectors.
Yeah.
And I used to tape my acetate to the page, to the roller, so that I could then write all my stuff for it, and then I will walk away with my acetate. And then the next show that I went to,
you load your file.
I load my file, put that in, and then I had everything into that. The only thing I couldn't do was obviously the buttons, because obviously everybody will put their own thing into it. But yeah, that's how I used to go around.
I just remember so much electrical tape. Oh God. It's like every bit, and then everyone had their own way of marking up what things did. You're like, well, these symbols that you've drawn here.
I always have a lot of appreciation for the house LD who has to set up the console. Yeah. Not so much right now, because now your MAs and everything, it's a lot easier. You can modify them to what you want to do. But back in the day, it was like, right, all lights are going to live here, and this lights live there. And
because it was patched in a way where like I'm trying to remember how Pearl used to work. There was like faders at the top. We could make them do whatever you wanted, kind of, and then the roller, and you had more, and that was kind of like where you got the most use out of the console.
Yeah, and this is before obviously the screen. You know, it was like you will patch the lights, and you'll go like, okay, so the strobes go from here to there, and then page up, and then like that's where the like where the spots are gonna live, or the washes, and it was all in buttons, and it's the graduation from a pearl to a diamond. Was like woo-hoo-hoo.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
And so you start programming or learning how to program the desk, which I'm assuming, based on being a computer person, it was like, this makes sense.
Yeah, it's a new toy, a new thing that just kind of like it came naturally in a way. As most people probably still programmed it incorrectly for most of the time, but got what you needed at the end of it, which is kind of the goal, I think. Doesn't matter how you use it. It's if you get what your vision is out of the end of it.
Yes, and I think that there's a misconception, I think, sometimes about the idea that desk is better, you know.
And I hate that.
And I always say is like, it depends on the way that you're used to syntaxing and the way you understand the syntax.
Yeah.
And every desk can do whatever they want. You know, you can do everything. It's just, do you know how to wrestle the desk to do what you want it to do?
It's always a good friend of mine, Ben Cash. I don't know. Yeah. It's just like, it's not very arty. It is like the most anti-art way of controlling lights possible using maths. And that's sort of always stuck with me. It's just like, it's just a tool at the end of the day. And as long as you know how to, as you say, wrestle it to get what you need at the end of the day, then that's use what you want.
Yeah, exactly. It's all that matters.
If that works for you.
What's the first show in which you did something? And it doesn't have to be that the whole show was that, but just a moment where you just went, oh, that's me on stage. Like that.
Yeah.
That's me bringing something to the show.
I think it was a couple of years after I started with Unit 6. We did a show at Wembley Arena. And there was one song that they would never play. And it was like this sort of like real departure for them. It was extremely moody, slow. It was all about like, the music was very emotional, like without any vocals or anything. And it was just stripping it all down and just turning little bits on slowly, using darkness and like properly using darkness to its greatest effect. I think that's when I started to find like, rolling back a little bit, I used to design based on what other people did and used lights in the way that other people did. And at that point it was like, cool, I actually prefer turn it all off. What do we need to turn on now? It doesn't matter about the size of the show. It could be a club or a stadium. It's like, just turn it all off. Where do we start? And that was one of the... So I can't remember what the song was called, but that was the moment where I was like... we were there at Wembley and they filmed it and watching it back, and I was like, that as a moment in the show actually stands out because it's so different to the rest of it, which has just kind of like been jabbed together as quick as possible with no time, as we always have. I'd say learning to utilize less was kind of like the big opening door for me. And then I think you look at shows that I design now anyway, and there's not a big array of different fixture types or different sort of like things. It's like, right, let's use lights that we know can do multiple and use them in interesting ways.
I had to defend someone's thesis about 10 years ago that, or more than that, probably like 15 years ago, that black or the lack of a light is actually a color on stage.
Yes, it is. The lack of light is definitely a color on stage. And every show that you see a picture of, the best pictures are always the ones where there's like a zone or a section of lighting that's on, or one light that's on, and it's just like extremely, that's when you get the most iconic photos, and I think it's the most striking moments in shows as well, as where it drops right down.
Walk me through how did you design a show? Because obviously, but even the way that we program are completely different. But how do you design a show? Like, walk me through your process of band says we're going on tour, and let's say for the sake of this exercise, you are going to do an arena tour. How do you? What's your process to get that show going?
Back when I was younger, or now?
Both, actually.
Both. So originally, full chaos. Just absolute chaos. Chucking way too much stuff on the stage. There's stuff over here. There's stuff there. It's just like there's no real identity or sort of like there's no real sort of like strong visual aspect. It's just kind of like there's stuff everywhere and we'll make it work. Now, I spend so much time just like getting to know who they are, like watching the artists speak on podcasts, watching past footage, because it's important. Their show, even if you're new to their team, is their old shows, but they must be proud of them. So, what do they like? What don't they like? What can I bring that's new or different? For example, last year I worked with 30 Seconds to Mars with Ben Cash actually, and he called me and he was like, "Do you want to do this?" It's like, let's have a little thing. Let's chat about it. So we chatted about it. They didn't really have any ideas, and we sort of again blank page. I just start with Vectorworks, put an arena in it, put a stage. If you need to be working on a house stage, just put a house stage in. Let's start playing with shapes. What works, what doesn't work. With 30 Seconds to Mars, very iconic triangles throughout their career. So we're like, probably they haven't done this for some reason, so we should maybe do this. Started with, triangle stage, triangle screen, start placing simple things around it. And just play with shape. I played with shape for a long time, and then back and forth, then put that into Depends or some visualization software, just as the shapes, turn them on, turn them into screens, turn them, what does it look like if there's lights under the stage? Or does it look like there's some lights here? And just sort of start moving sort of stuff around the space, which is a blessing now because our visualization software is a lot better than it used to be. WYSIWYG was great. It still is. Just it sort of got lost a little bit in the times, whereas Depends is like a little bit more realistic, and cinema and all the other things that you can. They've all got their sort of like, what do you call it? They've all got their place. Yeah, it's very much start with shape, see where that goes, and then start adding lights, and then turn some stuff into screens. No screens, okay. What if that was some form of lighting setup? But yeah, always start with less for me, anyway, and then see where it goes. Add some staging.
Do you think about rhythm? Do you think about silhouettes? Do you think about color temperatures when you're starting to do these things, or how does your brain, let's say once you have built the stage in a way that you want to, and you start, I'm assuming, programming a little bit to see how flexible it is, and then, oh crap, I forgot about this, and then you add a couple more things, obviously.
I've never really sort of like programmed prior to programming, if you know what I mean. So I spend so much time just sort of like playing around with just whatever the inbuilt software's capabilities are. So just turning stuff on and off and creating scenes and sort of like moving between things. If there's automation, moving some stuff around, seeing how that works. And then, as you say, placing some lights, being like, okay, this is the most common way place to put everything that can, give you a show quite quickly, like a little cutty cutter. Right, there's spots and strobes there. There's this here, and then just sort of playing around with, as you say, what if we just turn something on here, or what if there is something in this area that currently has nothing? What does that give us? Does it give us anything that's worthwhile? Sometimes.
And then when you move to pre-programming, because obviously you're one of those designers who still programs his own shows, you don't really.
Oh yeah, I'm very hands-on. Like I get better the further we get into the sort of like programming. But the early days, when you're figuring out what you can get out of something, I find like Nikita works for me quite a lot. and he's just like, Lou, just sit there and just sort of like be like, I need an evening. We're just like playing around and just storing like, you know, position presets or like looks, things that have been, that you created that look nice, and just being like, cool, let's find some holes for these looks in the show, and then starting to storyboard the show out from there in terms of like, you know, flow, but also, how do you say, are we using color? Sometimes you don't need to. Like the current Shawn show is mainly CTO, tungsten, like very little color, but when color comes, it's impactful. Another show that I worked on was Paris, band from Boston, and their brief from the off was no color, and we had one song. It was red. It's like, if we're going to do it, we might as well do it in a strong way. Make it a big impact, and then straight back to.
I did a club night many years ago. We're talking about 14 years ago, where I said I'm only going to use color temperatures of white throughout the entire night, and I'm going to move from DJ to DJ in the way that I program each DJ and the color temperature that each DJ gets. And so my first cue was with the first DJ. It was a 60-minute cue that went on a birdie at the bottom of the floor across 5 different places, and it went from 0 to 100 in 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
So when he started playing, the entire club was dark. There was nobody, and that's when they opened the doors.
Yeah. This is pitch black. 60-minute cue. It's bold. I like that.
I have a lot of those, unfortunately. I am known for having long-ass queues. Okay, so you're programming. And as respect, you know, everyone programs in a different way. How do you program your show? You go, right, let's make colors, let's do this, let's do bases, let's build this, let's talk to the band. Like, how do you structure that programming element? Because I still find it amazing. You know, like, I don't program anymore.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time people program for me. Every now and then I have to jump behind the desk.
But you can. That's the best thing. Is like being able to not only help out, but also being able to show what you're thinking, even if it's in its most basic form, I think is key. And that's across any of the mediums. So light, video, whatever. I think it's extremely important that you have the ability to be like, I'll just show you quickly what is in my head, because sometimes it's easier to show than it is to explain. And you save a lot of time if you just be like this. Okay, cool. And then your programmer can go away and turn that into something that's much more beautiful.
It is, but I think that I always consider a programmer an art form.
Yeah.
Because I always compare lighting design to the process of etching, in terms of the designer has the idea, which is the original drawing, and then you go and you etch it into, you draw it into the plat, right? That's your cat drawer.
Yeah.
That's your vector guys. Yeah. And then you give that, once it's there, you give it to the guys who's going to do the acid, right? And so that guy is your crew chief with all the technicians to put the lamps where they're supposed to be. And then when it comes out, someone has to clean it. Yeah. And that's your programmer. Yeah. And then someone has to print it, and that's your operator. And all of them have an element on the show that has an imprint of all of them.
Yeah.
And in your case, it's like you're taking a massive shock of all that.
Interesting. It's definitely an interesting way of viewing it. But yeah, there is so many people involved in creating shows nowadays, especially arenas and stadiums and whatnot. And they've all got their own artistic way of seeing things. And I think everyone will end up surprising you as well. Like the amount of times, just gave him the key. He's just like, this, that, the other. Here's an idea. It's just like, just show me. Like, it's easier if you just show us, because then everyone can see it, and your idea might be great, but might not be right, or it might start a spark, and then someone else will add a layer, and then someone else will add a layer, and it might not look like how you originally intended, but it will grow to be, what is right for this show or this song or this moment in the set, which I think is really interesting.
Do you set any rules when you start programming or when you start designing?
Lights don't wobble. Lights don't wobble. No, very few rules, but I think it's mainly the way that I design and place lighting kind of imposes those rules straight away, because if you turn everything on at once, it's going to look mental. You've got to use things in layers, like we were chatting about. But yeah, my only rule is that very rarely do the lights do any form of like actual movement like that. Go A to B, B to C, great. But yeah, no wobbling around. We don't need any of that. But then again, that works with the artists that I choose to work with. I don't do any sort of dance music or anything like that. But even if I did, I think I would still impose that same rule and find ways to sort of like play with the arsenal that has been drawn on the drawing
that you're given. Yeah. I did a show for Fundazione Prada many years ago, and once again, my first cue was a 1 hour cue, and the reason for it is because the show started at 6:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And so the sun was still out, and so I made my first cue, and I was like, right, let's go get a beer. And everyone went, why? I was like, well, Mother Nature is going to do the rest of the job for the next hour.
Yeah.
As that came down, my light actually started behaving in a different way. But yeah, I like the idea of no wobble. Sometimes it's important to sculpt. I mean, I would say it's a lot of your work is sculpting.
Yeah. There's it's a lot more creating shape, sculpting, framing the artist as well. Yeah. It's just been saying that I was a big wobbler of lights back in the day. It was just one of those things that just became something that I kept removing from looks or stuff like that, and you end up being, I can now sort of like just create some nice architecture around the artist and use that for impact rather than sort of this.
Do you think there's a sense of maturity sometimes in your design?
I think so. I think everyone. Well, I'm always evolving in the way that my decisions are made on how I think things should look. But again, as we said, when you start to get into these sort of like roles where you are doing arenas, there's usually multiple people involved. Sometimes there's a creative director, sometimes there's a band's mate who they trust. Had some of those in my time. Less so now, but mainly like there's usually a creative director, or there's creative people involved in the camp who are trying to spread their wings a little bit. And on Shawn anyway, a young lad that I met in 2019 called Connor. You would have seen him last night at the show. He was on the road with Shawn as a videographer, and then over time they got really close, and he's now Shawn's creative director. But in 22, that was his first sort of like foray into working with us on the show, and it sort of opened up his eyes into this world. And I just sort of was like, look, if Shawn wants you around, then just ask questions and we can help. Like we can help you learn about this. I'm not going to mold you in my way, but I can show you how I like to do things. It might not be the right way, but it seems to work quite well. And then I brought him on to do a show with a guy called Alec Benjamin. I was like, I'll do this. It was for the production company 24/7, but I want to bring Connor in to sort of like, have his opinion. He's a young guy. He's a young artist. He's more aware of his music than I am. And it was a little club tour. So it was like taking him from the arenas into a club just to see like how he would operate there. He doesn't do lighting or anything. It's just very much like ideas based. And then this entire Shawn campaign, the last 2 years, we've worked on together, and it's been great. It's like seeing him grow, and also just like having a different opinion from his very videographer, cinematography sort of background. Really just sort of like adds in a different sort of flair, and I'll be like, cool, we've got the structure of this song in, and it's it's good to go. If we had to do a show tomorrow, we could do a show, and he'll come in and help peel some stuff back, chuck in some new ideas, be like, oh, what if we did this in this section? I think it's really interesting to bring young people in.
It's important also to, like you said, sometimes the artist is not something that you're used to, or that you understand the entire element that goes behind it. So having somebody who almost reinterprets you what's going on, it's really, really important.
It is indeed.
Okay, so talk to me about the difference between a co-design and a collaborative design.
A co-design is a fight. Collaborative design is where everyone's working together and everyone's got one goal in mind, which is, creating the best show or performance possible for the artist who they're working for. But yeah, there's a lot of co-designs. Well, not many anymore, but there's definitely some co-designs where you're just like, when's this end? I try and avoid co-designing, but just being like, cool, we're designing this together, but this is a collaborative. Like, but everyone's gonna have ideas here, and we're gonna bounce them around, see which ones stick, see which ones don't, and spend time in sort of like the design process. Just like you can always tell. You can always tell if someone's going, here's the thing, let me put some lights on it. So okay, or here's the thing, we don't really want to change anything, but have you got any ideas? But yeah, the jobs I've done recently in the last sort of like 4 or 5 years have all been very collaborative, working with different people, other lighting designers, or Bronski and Amber from Tourbox I've done a lot of work with, and they're great collaborators. They'll always look after the production design usually nowadays, and then they bring me in as lighting, but they know that I'll bring in, and if there's automation pieces, I'll just be like, cool, I know you want me to just sort of go, here's some ideas of what's going to happen and where that's going to go. And then they'll be like, oh, we've got this idea here where for this song we really want to do this, and this song we really want to do this. But between that and that, which is maybe a 5-song gap, where does the lighting and the automation of that lighting go? But yeah, I definitely prefer collaborators.
Collaborators are definitely better. I mean, there's one thing that I always talk about, that the bigger the artist, the bigger the politics.
Yes.
And people don't realize. People think that we're just happy people coming into work, which, I am one of those happy people coming into work. But there's a lot of politics in this world of high artists.
Especially on it, as soon as you get into like the pop world, or sort of like you start stepping into artists that are doing big tours all the time, be that big theatre tours or big arena tours, there's a lot of people there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and that could be management, or it could be just like, again, friends, or just people that have been around the camp for a long time. But yeah, it's just like there is a lot of politics, and it is, I would say, 50, 60, 70% of the job. Once the design's done, you're like, cool, that's signed off. But getting there was quite a lengthy process. There's definitely a lot of politics, and I don't think a lot of people expect that. They kind of expect it to be a very creative, very fun role all the time. Whereas like, actually there's the creative fun part's probably 30%. And the rest of it is like very business management-y, politics, making sure, all the boxes are ticked. And then especially with like design, it's like getting to the point where you're like, cool, this looks lovely. I would now like to hand it over to a rigger to tell me that this is definitely lovely and can be done.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I once had an artist and their team, and it was one of the most painful moments in my life, because I looked up to the drawings into the renders that someone in the team had done and that the artist had signed off. And I was like, there's no shadows in your renders? And like, well, yeah. It's like, but things are hanging. Physical objects generate shadows. Yeah. She doesn't want to see shadows.
Just turn them off. Don't want to see shadows, so let's just turn them off.
Oh, the life. Who do you think is someone who you massively appreciate within the crew or your process that most of the people are even unaware that they exist?
Not aware that they exist.
He's thinking. It's not an easy one because there's a lot of roles in there that, but for example, you know, like yesterday when I saw the show, the fact that you have somebody to your left who's looking after that desk, you know, and most people have no idea that someone might be just looking after key light.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. It's not. I don't think it's even a lighting role. I think it's riggers, because people are just going, "Oh, yeah, this is nice," and then you go, "Oh, yeah, they're going to take that out again later." And it's like I've done tours where if you have a bad rigger, like it affects everyone, every single person, every department, because it will be a slow day. If you've got a great rigger, you've got an easy day. It might be a hard day, but they make the day easier. And that affects the show, because if you're overrunning a couple of hours, you've got a very strict deadline in our industry, which is doors, or at very least, the artist has to go on at 9 p.m. So you can be delayed, you can be doing stuff after those doors open, but when that person walks on stage at 9 p.m., whatever was put in that room that day needs to work. Yes, I think there's a lot of like, I think it's everyone as well. It's like everyone. The show isn't just the design. The show isn't just the team that you see at front of house. It's everyone. It's like everyone has to work together, like very well, for a show to, especially large shows, to happen.
It has to be a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. But as you say, like the way I program our shows is very time code heavy. So it's when it's available, I always take it, because it means that the person operating the show and looking after the day to day of how that looks on a lighting front has time to look at the stage. They're not looking at buttons or changing pages or anything like that. It's very like from the word go, like the show will just roll into each other. Song will link into song, into song, into song, and then the lighting operator can dial in key light, watch what the camera director's doing, sculpt a little bit of that, making sure it's not just like, oh yeah, lights on, artist. It's like let's be a bit more creative than that. And yeah, I think there's so many roles in our industry that I think that the people that come to see the shows don't know about. Like, even technician wise, I'm just trying to think of it's any specific. I don't think there's any specific role. I think it's just like, you know, having a well-oiled machine in terms of like crew that work together is essential. And then just having people that are willing to, if they're done with their role of the day, and they can see another department struggling, are willing to reach out and be like, "There's anything I can do," which you see a lot more nowadays as well. It's less, we're this team, we're that team. It's like, oh right, this needs doing, does it? Do you want me to get a couple of crew and help you here? Yeah, I'm quite not hands-on in terms of loading, but I'm hands-on in terms of like, I'll be around in the mornings. I'll be there making sure, you know, just, but my role nowadays is mainly reassuring management and the artist that, you know, everything's all good. You know? There's nothing that you walk on that stage and you've got no worries. Like, your show's going to happen as you expect it to. You're not going to be surprised by anything.
How often do you talk to the artist?
Most show days. Yeah. And then in the design process, it'll be some artists, 2-3 times a week. Some would do a weekly call or 2 calls a month. It all depends on the artist really, and how involved they want to be. And if they want to be heavily involved, which I've had in the past, it's like, you're doing a couple of calls a week at least, and updates and changes and re-showing renders, and you're like, this is great, this works really well, but as soon as we put this in a room, we're going to be stripping all of this out because it's not going to feel right. Yeah. And I suppose with someone like Shawn, it's like see him at the shows, and then design process, it's like he's a little bit less hands-on in sort of like our side of things. He kind of trusts the team, and we have sort of like a global conversation at the beginning of what he does and doesn't like at the moment and where he wants to take the show. Like last year, we did loads of underplays, and our rig was 90% pars. Just like he was just like, he wanted that organic feeling, and that's why there's, even on the show now, there's still some pars dotted around on the floor, just to sort of give them a little bit of actual warmth. Yeah, and then other artists like CHVRCHES, Lauren would be very hands-on and very involved in the design process. Not a couple of times a week, but you feel when an artist is more involved, like they're asking questions and coming up with ideas and sending new mood boards, and I've got this idea for sort of stage outfits and stuff like that, and they just want to bounce their ideas off you as a creative and just be like, okay, that's cool, or have you thought about this? And then it's really to and fro sort of way of communicating, which is really nice, and just the trust in your opinion as well is kind of, the trust in your opinion is like, they've had you around for enough that they can be open, and they can be what's the word? They can. I'm trying to think what the word is. They can generally be open and just like
trust in your opinion.
Trust in your opinion, that sort of thing. Yeah. They don't mind having bad ideas in front of you. I can't think of a word to describe that.
Vulnerability at the end of the day.
Vulnerability. That's probably it, actually. They can be vulnerable around you and just sort of be like, here's some things that I've been thinking about, and you can be like, oh, cool. And you can take that and implement it into areas of the show, or implement it in an interesting way, which then allows the audience to maybe see some of that vulnerability as well, and see, break that third wall between the audience and the artist.
Is there a moment in a show that you just kind of turn around and went, oh crap?
I think first shows, you always have that. Like, maybe definitely first shows, you always have that. Before anything's even on, lights go out, and just like, right, that's where we find out if there's any issues, real issues. Like, because you can rehearse things, you can run the show as many times as you want, but until you do it in front of an audience, and it's like you're opening the book to you going, cool, we've created this, it's now yours, sort of thing. And then the fans take away what they want from that, and just seeing the reaction and stuff like that. I think the biggest impact for me was after COVID. I went to Coachella with Dave, and it was the first time we'd been in amongst a big audience for a while, and you just go, this is what we do. The stuff behind the scenes is all fun, but the reason we do it is like for giving people an experience and allowing them to sort of take away what they want to take away from the show and the performance of the artist.
I always find it incredible that in theater you have all your testing, and you invite people, and people can come into dress rehearsals, and they can this kind of work in progress that you're showing, and then eventually you have press night and then it goes out, but for a good chunk of time you're showing audiences. Film has screenings. There's nothing like that in concert touring.
Show one.
Show one.
Yeah. Like I don't, for a long time I was like, oh right, show one, we're done. But over the last sort of like 5-10 years, it's like show one's just the beginning. It's like we worked for months to get to here, and now we're going to refine this over the next month, 2 months worth of shows.
Yeah.
Going back to the drawing board for some elements maybe as well. Never afraid of doing that. If you like, that song just didn't work, or this moment didn't work, let's refine that and just see where it ends up. Try some things. The first thing you might do might go in the bin again. But yeah, show one is just like, it's now the beginning of the refinement stage of the design and the show, and it's really interesting. And when I flipped to thinking that way, it opened up like another layer sort of thing, which I thought was not something that you thought you'd do. You'd think you'd just be like, cool, we've now done the show, especially a bit on a large scale where there's loads of moving parts, and everyone just knows now that show one's just show one. Show two might be different. Show three might be a little bit more different. Show 30 also might be different to show one.
Do you tend to make most of your big changes between legs of a tour, or do you think that you do incremental changes on a regular basis so that it never changes that way? It used to be big changes so you'd do Europe, and then there'd be like a couple of days of rehearsals where you can implement some major changes before going to North America or something. But especially with Shawn this time, because they've taken me out on the road as this sort of like new role of sort of like show director / show maintenance. It's kind of what it is. We make incremental changes every day. Like, there's always a few notes that are like, we didn't catch that. We need to catch this next time. Like even 2 days ago, we changed the color of a song. Just like, that's not working quite. So changing color or changing the way we're structuring hits, or just sort of like the shape around the artist again. Incremental is definitely my favorite way of doing it, because it allows you to experiment a little bit more freely as well, because you can be like, let's try this tonight. Let's try that. Stuff that's not going to affect the show globally. It's not going to be something that's like, oh, what happened there? But it allows you to experiment more freely, and it's nice to have a team that also wanted to do that and not be like, well, we've loaded in, let's go and have dinner and wait until showtime. It's like, loaded in, should we do a couple of updates? Is there anything we've got today that we should look at? Video less so. It's more playing with lights and playing with how the sort of like the stage is structured for certain elements of the show. But then we added, for the Mendes show yesterday, we added a piece of an extra layer to a song, which was just Shawn wanted to see some lyrics, and then the song Heart of Gold, he wanted to put some lyrics up on the screen in a very sort of like wavy way, and then we restructured the content to go into a heart, like a subtle heart shape, which is kind of like the sort of like the icon of this campaign. So yeah, always just sort of tweaking. It's nice. I enjoy tweaking. You mentioned something that obviously, as an industry, we had to go through. Talk to me about the COVID years. What did you do? Because obviously it was, we couldn't do shows.
No. Fortunately, we did like it was called The Residency with Shawn, where he had just literally released an album before the world closed down. So we went to like play a couple of different venues in Los Angeles, some old theaters that weren't being used, and used different spaces within those theaters to sort of like create a live film performance, but with like a little bit of a narrative for it. So there was that, and there was just like one-off TV performances. So we got churches to film themselves on a white background in their houses. So we sent someone around to each person's house to film, and then worked with Manny Cond, and he did a load of notch stuff to that for Fallon. Did an entire concert in Depence for churches again. They did a Splendor in the Grass VR. So again, we filmed them on green screen and then slotted them into virtual environments in Depence for a 30-minute show, which was fun. We put them in a warehouse with like loads of old TVs, and so we had content made for all the TVs, and then lighting. We put some SFX in there. I mean, some people thought it was real, so that worked. And we just like graded it and everything. So yeah, there was definitely some fun moments, but also at the same time, it was like it was the first time I stopped in a long, like, ever probably. So from when I started doing this to 21 was it? 20. Yeah, it was the first time I sort of like stopped and sort of like took stock of everything, and it allowed me to see what else was going on in the world, to actually pay attention to other things. Started trading.
Talk to me about that.
Probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done.
Go on.
Yeah. Trading teaches you a lot about yourself, and a lot of teaches you about your bad habits quite quickly. And yeah, teaches you a lot about yourself. Because you make money, you lose money. You make money, you lose money. But yeah, good thing now is that I've learned my lessons. so it's a nice skill to have on the side. Mainly just invest in now. So, but again, it was a world that I had never paid attention to. I was just on the hamster wheel of life, enjoying living, and not really sort of like setting myself up for old age. So gave me a little window of time to sort of get into that. And then I'm sure like a lot of people spending time filling out forms trying to get grants or get funding from the government at the time, just to sort of like keep the business rolling. But yeah, I was lucky. I had enough work to tick us over, and then a couple. I think it was one of the Arts Council grants. I managed to get a little bit of money from that just to sort of help with expenses. But it was a very eye-opening period of everyone's life, I think. Spending all of your time at home, which is something that we never do. I'm now stuck in the house for 3 months. 6 months. Nearly a year. It was great. We just got a dog as well. So we got a dog in November before. So in 2019, it was kind of like the perfect time to get a dog, because I was like, be home every now and then, so be able to help the dog learn and teach him new tricks and stuff, and then just solid blocks of time at home where, just sort of getting to know another side of yourself in a way, which I thought was quite interesting. And still is. I mean, it's definitely opened up areas of interest, like in trading and stuff like that I never thought I would look at or think about, because I was just make the shows. Goes next gig, and it's definitely changed the way I work. It's definitely gone from trying to do everything to finding 1 or 2 things a year which really interest me, and with teams of people that I really like to work with. This year I've worked for Shawn and Teddy Swims. That's pre-COVID. There'd have been another 6 artists on that list. And be exhausted. Yeah, still tired, but not as tired as I used to be.
I think you're one of the few people that I saw during COVID when you came to visit us at the studio, or visit me at the studio. Me, myself, and I guess at that point.
It's just you rattling around in the office most of the time, wasn't it?
It was. I want to talk to you about a contentious subject, which many of the people that I talk to, because of the different sides of it, and it's color management.
Color management, interesting.
The way that how do you play with the color based on the lamps, based on the different sources that we have, but also the big ass LED screen that you have to carry everywhere nowadays. As Willie Williams has imposed into the show design for the past 20 years of our lives. How do you work with color?
How do I work with color? I'm a big fan of one color. I'm a big fan of like giving songs or parts of shows, mainly songs, or parts of shows, like identities. I think you were seeing last night, it was like there's blocks where it's just like we're living in the CTO world now, and then we snap to something else, like for shock or for just like real shift in sort of like the mood of the room. But yeah, operators that I work with and know that if they're doing festivals, their biggest pain is going to be sitting there and matching color, because there's nothing worse than going to a song that's, I don't know, cyan or not, or just like blue, but a specific blue, and then it's just like all of the blues, and it just looks like an absolute car crash. But yeah, so we spend a lot of time like refining what the colors are of songs and what that color is. Like one song in the Shawn show, it's in this blue spectrum. It's like the only blue song, but that blue has changed multiple times, which is then syncing up with the content on the screen, all the different lighting fixtures that we have, from LED strobes to LED spots, and then to a different LED strobe, so they all have their own way of mixing color, which is lovely. There's no like generic like this is how we're going to mix color, or the console doesn't know how to interpret one color on a color picker to be matched by all lighting sources. So yeah, I'm a big fan of one color and white, or one color CTO. And then there's the moments where you do, like we do a CMYK thing in the Shawn show, and it's impactful because it's different. It's it changes things up a little bit. But yeah, big fan of keeping it simple, not trying to overclutter the space with like purple from here, yellow from there, bit of blue there. It's just like, there's shifts. Do like some gradients. Yeah,
it's especially with LED. I always, not so much with obviously from the source, but I think because of how the screen reinterprets what you're doing on stage. How sometimes you look up and you're like, the stage looks one way, but then the video looks a little bit different, and you're just like, oh god. Especially for festivals, I think that in arenas and things like that. Maybe stadiums where the artist is so small somewhere over there, and a lot of people rely on the screen, and suddenly you look at the screen and it's not balanced correctly, and it's just like
Jamie on Shawn knows that the first thing he does when we get to a festival is make sure they've done a proper white balance of their screens, so that we know that when we put our cameras up there, it's going to look all right. Yeah, just like. Festivals are probably one of the harder places for specific shows to go to. Like if your show's very specific about certain things, then or if you're on during the day, or you're not headlining, where you don't have the overnight loading, where you can refine things and work with the festival's technicians to get everything right, and be like, why is that one grey and that one's white? It's the same screen, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely again, there's a skill that people wouldn't know about. The person who white balanced the screens. That'll be a sort of someone that the general public wouldn't know was a job, rigging and white balancing screens, because I've seen screens that aren't balanced at all. You're just like, yep, everyone's show looks shit.
I borrowed for a while from a guy from Sony a little meter that would allow me to make sure that all my screens were white balanced in the correct way for film. Yeah.
What, it was just like a little meter that you just sort of held up right next to the pixels? That's pretty good.
And so then you will move them around the screen and see if one of the panels was off or little things like that. So you can then go back into the processor and then fix everything. Yeah, film world, I guess, is the best way of putting it. You know, you have to have that kind of white balance. Talk to me about the hardest moment in a show, but also in the process to make a show.
Starting with the blank page. So, yeah. I think the hardest moment in the process is definitely sort of getting going. Because it's not motivation. It's getting the wheels just turning, starting to just sort of play with ideas. For me, I can spend a lot of time just sort of like pre-drawing. Just finding things that are nice and just sort of like bouncing sort of just like mood off an artist. And then preparing that first version and being like, okay, there you go. What we think? Yeah, sort of putting the first idea out there. And the hardest moment in a show. The hardest moment in a show. It's probably like the rehearsals, because you kind of have to, as a creative, you have to manage people's time in a way, like it can be kind about not being like, well, we're all going to stay up until this is done, and just sort of making sure that you keep the team on side, because I've probably done it myself, lost a team's trust at points by just being like working people too hard or asking people to stay too late or being like, this kind of has to just be done. Definitely the hardest part in a show is managing personnel, and especially if you have people that don't work well together or just generally don't get on. Again, it's politics and the non-creative side of things is always the hard part. I think once you're in a studio space or you're in rehearsals or you're in a programming suite, that's the fun part. That's coming up with ideas and just seeing what happens. Just throwing things at the page or throwing things in the console and seeing what comes out the other end. That's the fun part, the easy part. The politics and the personnel and sort of like the managing of the machine is definitely the harder part. And managing sleep.
Yeah, I think sleep and relationships are probably the hardest thing to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky. My wife she knows that if I say yes to a project, that it's kind of like it's not a toe dip. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do for now. And we speak every day. Some days it's just a little hello, a little check-in. She's just like, cool, she understands. And I don't think most people's partners who, if you don't meet someone doing this and someone decides to do this, I think it would be quite a big shock in terms of like, just in terms of like how much communication you can have or how the distance and the time away. I went from touring and being away for 11 to 12 months a year, and luckily Nina met me at that point. Whereas now it's a little bit less, it became a lot less, and then this year's been a little bit more away. and she's been extremely supportive. And she's like, she knows it's a period. Be a period where I'm a little bit more away, a little bit more disconnected, and then I'll get home and it'll be all good. After 3 or 4 days of recovering.
I say, what's the first thing that you do when you get home?
We try and go out for a walk with the dog now, or just get in, and if it's lunchtime, just go out and have lunch. Just like try and like hit that reset as quick as possible from being on the road to not, and then I sleep. Be like, oh, do you want to watch a film tonight? Yeah, sure. 5 minutes in, out. Yeah, just try and hit that reset as quick as possible. But I think for anyone, like if you go away for a month and you're going from city to city to city, soon it's going to take you a couple of days at least to recover from the travel and the late nights and the decision to have one more cocktail.
One of the hardest decisions. It's I always say that the moment you get home, there's almost like a shock to your system. Yeah. Suddenly you have a home cooked meal.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I know it'll be sea bass or something.
Do you have any pre-show rituals that you go through? Like, do you have an element that you go through? I do this by this time, that by that time to get to the show time.
What, that are just personal and not show based?
Correct.
I always like to go for a walk. If it's not, well, even if it is raining, just like get out of the venue, especially if you've been there all day. Just get out and just like yesterday when just sat by the river.
By the river, yeah.
Sat by the river for a bit and then you text and I was like, oh, great. But yeah, just sort of like get out and just sort of just hit the reset, sort of away from dealing with the day-to-day runnings of a show. And then pre-show, I always just do a walk around stage. Yeah. Even if it's not needed. Just still walk, just make sure everything's in its place. Got to get the operator to check a few things. Make sure nothing's been kicked. You got a load of floor lights. Something's going to get kicked at some point. But yeah, personal, get out of the venue, show, walk the stage.
Do you have any utensils that you put on your console? Like, you know, I put a card on my console every single time.
A card?
Yeah. I carry a tarot card with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it always the same?
It changes depending on, but I always have a tarot card.
That's cool.
And it always goes in the desk or my media server, wherever it is. Whatever I'm operating.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm not operating anything, it will go underneath my notebook.
Yeah. At the moment, like we've been on the current run we're doing, incense has been the thing throughout the show. It's like give the area a nice little smell. Nikita's got some hilarious little squidgy toys and stuff. It's got this thing called Steve. Steve's up. Then just checking in with everyone as well is kind of more my thing. It's just like, I'm not saying that it's required, but I just thought on my way to front of house, I'll go via all the sort of like people involved in the creative elements of the show and just check in, make sure they're good. Little couple of minute chat, move on. But yeah, there's no tarot cards, but the incense is the thing at the moment, and just make sure we've got loads of water. Because the amount of times you get to front of house, you're like halfway through the show, and you're just like, no one, there's no drinks out here. So any other little quirky things? I don't think so. No, not at the moment anyway.
What are you excited about? And it could be about technology. It could be about, you know, things that you've seen. What is it that you kind of go, oh, that's kind of interesting, or I want to explore more of that?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how AI interacts with our industry in the non-obvious ways. Because obviously there's people like, I think we'll start to see more and more AI-generated content in the coming years, just because it's cheaper and it allows, you know, I see it as a creative tool. I haven't used it much at all yet, but it'd be interesting to see what the moment of implementing itself into, I don't know, a lighting console or something, and it actually having an impact in what you do on a day-to-day basis. I'd be interested to see where it comes from and how it's implemented into controlling of things that are in real space, such as lights. But I can't see that happening anytime soon, because it's such a niche thing that we do, that it's you're putting your opinion out there at the end of the day, in your thoughts, what are coming out of the video or the lighting. So I can't. Be interesting to see how AI I think that's the one thing for me, is just like, I don't know how it's going to impact our industry in terms of like outside of the obvious. So it'd be interesting to see where it comes from.
Yeah, I would say that there's obviously an element of having an AI agent inside the desk where you go, right, this is what I want, how I used to do it on this desk. Yeah. How do I do it on this desk? Or actually, can you please make me this in this with this? Like being able to describe what you want and then allowing it to program that. Don't think it's going to happen very easily.
No.
There's too many button presses to...
Because it would also have to have an understanding of what it looks like without, like in real life, not what it looks like, oh, this went blue. But yeah, there might be a world where you can be like, here's some simple notes. And then you run it back and you're like, not that.
No. I think there's almost an element also of someone just adds an 8-bar. And then suddenly like, can you just make an element that goes from here to there within that 8-bar, so that it doesn't have to come up with a brand new thing that needs to go in there?
Or they've done another round of the chorus and you can be like, get it to listen to the music in a way, and just be like, just slot that in, moves all the cues, slots in another chorus, copies all the hits exactly as they're supposed to be. That'd be nice. That'd be some like sort of like busy work time saving, like when music changes and it's just simple things like that. But yeah, I think there's going to be something that happens where you're just very surprised or shocked, most likely. And I'm sure you're very at the front of how we can utilize these things in our industry already with what you do over here.
Been talking to a few people. Outside of lighting, what are the things that you read or that you observe, that the art that you look at that comes into your work?
Yeah, a lot. I've been getting into architecture quite a lot. Sort of spending more time. Like, great place to come, Europe, and look around and just take pictures and just sort of like add them to a folder of just sort of like potential things for staging or potential things for this, that, and the other. And just like film mainly, just sort of seeing how things are lit differently, or different ways of approaching design, stuff like Blade Runner and stuff like that. They're a little bit more architectural in the way that they're presented. And then reading wise, I read nothing about lighting or this industry. All my stuff is like, I'm reading a book about, I can't remember who the guy's name is, but it's about his time as a stock operator in like the 80s. And it's just like his sort of like memoir, which is really interesting. And I spend a lot of time listening to random podcasts. That's kind of like my go-to, is just like go for a walk, podcast on, go for a drive, podcast on, learn about something random. I'm trying to get more healthy, so there's a lot of that at the moment.
Thank you to Louis for the conversation. If you'd like to dive deeper, head to our Substack, glyph-podcast, for show notes, links, and extras. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at glyph-podcasts. If you'd like to see a video of this conversation, head over to our YouTube channel. My name is Tupac Martyr. See you next time.